Hi, my name is Bob Rivers. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer at Eastern Bank, the largest independent bank headquartered here in Massachusetts and the oldest and largest mutual bank in the United States. This is a video adaptation of a session that I did as part of the Young Men's Success Series, one of the most rewarding things that I've done in my time back in Boston. I learned about the Young Men's Success Series from Percy Hales at Colette Phillips's Get Connected, which is the largest multicultural networking event, continuous networking event in Boston. And I ran into Percy. I'd never met Percy before in the audience, and for those of you who know Percy, he's not to be missed, and he's certainly not to be turned down, and he asked me to come and speak at the Young Men's Success Series. I'd never heard of it before, didn't know what to expect, but again, it was Percy, so how could I say no? And I have to say it was one of the most rewarding things I'd done in my time back in Boston. Hopefully all of those in the audience got a lot out of some of the things that I had to say, but honestly I think I got so much more in the opportunity to share them and really get to know people in the audience. Now, I mentioned when I first heard of the Young Men's Success Series, I had never heard of it before. I'd never met Percy before. And you'll find yourself in those situations where you meet new people, strangers, where they'll introduce you to strange ideas, and your natural reaction is to avoid them, to say no. And certainly that was my natural reaction when Percy came to me and asked me to come and speak. But I learned through experience that that's not the thing to do. And it really reminded me of one of my favorite movies that I've ever seen of all time, which is called Yes Man. Maybe you've seen it. Stars Jim Carrey. It goes back a few years, very funny movie, as most Jim Carrey movies are, but really the premise of the movie was the power of saying yes and being open to new ideas and experiences. Jim Carrey's character in the movie actually plays a banker and a loan officer, and someone who typically is conditioned to say no to new loan requests. And Jim Carrey's character was conditioned to say no to pretty much everything in life, to the point where he eventually lost all of his friends. He didn't go out on any dates. He pretty much stayed in his apartment and watched TV when he wasn't at work. A pretty lonely, dismal existence. And he met someone, a woman, who took him to a seminar and taught him the power of saying yes. And this motivational speaker at the seminar really drilled into the audience that when you're confronted with a new situation, always say yes, no matter what it is. And so Jim Carrey starts to do this and finds himself in all kinds of crazy situations. But in the end, he lives a much richer life. He's a more interesting person. Of course, he gets the girl in the end. And that really had a profound effect on me as I thought about the way I'd conducted my own life and reinforced the fact that I will always say yes and try to be open to new experiences. And I'd really recommend that to all of you. It's the way in which I network, quite frankly. I generally go to lots of events, meet lots of people that I haven't seen before, get the opportunity to meet them over lunch or coffee, maybe dinner later. And I always say yes because life is a random walk. You never know who you're going to meet, and you're never going to know who they're going to know. In some way, I've been reinforced with great faith that by doing things that way, by conducting your life that way, again, your life is so much richer. You meet many more people in the process. You make many more friends, and it creates so many more opportunities. One of my favorite books that I've ever read is by an author called Malcolm Gladwell. And Malcolm Gladwell has written a number of books. Maybe you've heard of them. One is called The Tipping Point. And in The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell talks about a case where the power of, might remind you of Kevin Bacon, who's an actor. You may know Kevin Bacon. And there's a game that's played, a popular game back a few years ago, which were the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Because Kevin Bacon has had such a diverse movie career that he's pretty much acted with every other actor that you can think of in some form or fashion. And through all of his different acting jobs that he's had, different movies, he's connected and separated by every other actor that's almost ever been by less than 6 other people. It's really quite amazing. And when you think about all the people really in the world, in a much bigger universe than maybe you would imagine, you will find in reality that you are separated by less than 6 people, and many of them that you do not know. So for example, Malcolm Gladwell's book did an experiment to test this theory. And they found a random group of people in Omaha, Nebraska. Now this really resonated with me because earlier in my career I actually lived in Omaha, Nebraska. And the task to these group of people in Omaha was to find a way to get a package to another person that they didn't know in Sharon, Massachusetts. Again, that really resonated with me because I grew up in Stoughton, Massachusetts, the next town over from Sharon. And the whole thing was you could not get it to that person directly. So you couldn't pick up the mail and mail it to them. You needed to find someone who knew someone else, who knew someone else, who eventually knew that person in Sharon, who would directly take it to them. Well, on average, this group of people got it to that person in Sharon in less than 4 people. The reason I tell you this story is when you think about your own networking, the world is a very small place. And people that you know often know other people that you also know, and you didn't realize that. Or know people that you want to know now or in the future. It's a good lesson to have in the sense that not only the power of networking and doing it a lot, but it's also in the power of making sure that you check how you behave. Sometimes I've asked, how did I get into the position that I have at Eastern? How did I become the president of Eastern Bank? And it's really sort of an interesting story, probably one that you wouldn't expect. Frankly, it wasn't one that I expected. I grew up in Stoughton, Massachusetts, in a lower middle class family, great family. Mom and dad are still alive, still live in the same house that I grew up in. And I ended up going to Stonehill College, which is literally about a 15 minutes drive down Route 138 to the next town over in Easton. Now at that time I wasn't thinking about being a bank president. Not sure if I was really thinking about anything other than making sure I graduated and meeting as many girls as I possibly could and having as much fun as any college student probably would imagine. But I got an interesting assignment in my senior year. The head of the business department, Professor Bill Burke, someone who had been sort of a mentor to me, had made an assignment to the capstone class, one of the last classes you take as a senior in the business curriculum. And the assignment was to write a business plan for your life. Imagine what you're going to do 5, 10, or longer years hence. He didn't put a time frame on it. He didn't specify anything about what it needed to be about, just whatever you wanted to be. But his one bit of advice was to aim high. Aim very high. Aim for something that you think is out of the realm of possibility for you, something you don't imagine you could ever get to, under the theory that if you aim here and you fall short, you'll aim here, which is a lot higher than what you would have normally aimed if you had set more reasonable expectations, something you really thought you could do. So I thought about this assignment for a while and decided to write down that I was going to be the president of the largest bank based in Boston by the time I was 40. So there I am at 22 years old, and I have no reason to think that this is possible. In fact, I didn't think it was possible. I thought it was just sort of a pipe dream. Again, Professor Burke said to aim high, so I aimed high. Completed my assignment. And as I think back on it, it was sort of an interesting goal. There was, again, I grew up in a working class family in Stoughton. The only reason that I went to Stonehill College is because I received a 3/4 scholarship that allowed me to pay the rest of the tuition on my own by working as a bank teller, which I did for 4 years. And then I cleaned bank branches after work, which is a pretty good job to have as a college kid. I think that was one of the reasons I picked banking as an industry at the time. I was in it. It was familiar. I liked it. It was one of the first things that came to mind for a career choice, although at the time I wasn't all that serious about it. I had no one in my family who was in banking. I had no connections whatsoever. I was about to be the second person in my family to graduate from college. So there was really no basis for the dream whatsoever. And as a result, I really didn't take it very seriously for a long period of time. I took that assignment, put it in a drawer, put it in a box, and there it sat for several years. Now, as it turned out, I ended up going into banking and liked it even more, learned a lot about the industry. And as the years went by, I came across that paper and remembered that assignment and thought, you know, I still don't think I can get there, but boy, I'm doing better than I thought I would have. So maybe I can approximate that in some particular way. Well, as my career went on, and the more and more that I was present about that dream in terms of how I directed my career, lo and behold, at age 42, I became the president of Eastern Bank, which is the largest bank based in Boston. Again, the point of the story is to aim high. Aim higher than you think you can get, because if you fall short, you'll be a lot further ahead than you otherwise would have been. It's also a story about having faith. You know, having faith in yourself, in your own abilities, and testing yourself in ways that, again, you don't think you can accomplish. It's also a story about wanting to control your own destiny. And I learned this a couple of times during the 1970s. I stood with my father on the unemployment line. And really, quite frankly, one of my early motivations to become a senior manager of a company had nothing to do with money or status. It had everything to do about control and line of sight, if you will. Because my father was an auditor, and a very good one. The other thing of that experience of my father being on the unemployment line made on me was diversity of experience. I've done a lot of things in my banking career, always in the same industry, but lots of different things, whether they be in support areas or dealing directly with customers. Part of it is because I have interest in lots of areas, so I wanted to learn a lot of different things. But a lot of the motivation was to have a lot of different experiences to draw on, so that if I were ever on the unemployment line, I had more skills and experiences to sell, because it would open up a greater opportunity set for me when looking for a job. At the risk of sharing yet another tired sports analogy, I'm going to share another one that maybe isn't so tired, but one that means something to me. Something that I tell my kids all the time, maybe something that will resonate with you, in particular if you're a football fan. I believe that life is a ground game. And what I mean by that is you make progress in a series of 3-yard pickups. Sometimes you get dropped for a loss. Sometimes you pick up 5 yards. But very rarely do you pick up lots of yardage. Life isn't a passing game. You can't just set up your life and decide to go for the end zone. The running game, as you know, sets up a good passing game. So you will have successful pass plays. You'll have big gains in your life and in your career. But it's because of all of those small gains and sometimes those losses and what you've learned from them and what you've gained from them that will really get you there and put you in that position to really go deep. One of the reasons that I share that with you is I find too many with my own kids where things, quite frankly, have come pretty easy. That there's an expectation that things will always be easy. One of the things that worries me most about my kids growing up is, have they had some of the experiences that I've had, that maybe you have had, that have made me resilient, have made me more patient, have given me better perspective? Will they have those things? For example, one of the first paying jobs that I ever had was delivering newspapers. Now, kids don't do that anymore, as you probably know. Papers come online. They're usually done by adults in cars that have these massive routes. But when I was growing up, you had a route that you covered by bicycle. And it was a daily paper. And people expected their paper to be delivered every day. So that meant in rain, snow, extreme heat, you needed to get up early in the morning, get on that bicycle, and deliver that newspaper, every single one, on time. I learned a lot from that experience, but I'll tell you the one that I learned the most was resilience. Because I hate the cold. And so when you get up in the morning and you've got to get on that bike and it's freezing cold, and the roads have been somewhat plowed, but not so much, and there's lots of ice, let me tell you, getting around on a bike in the cold with 2 stacks of newspapers in the baskets on either side, so it doesn't balance all that well. boy, that teaches you really an ability, if you'll pardon the expression, to suck it up, to make it happen, to dig down deep, even when it's very unpleasant, you don't want to do it. And that's something that you should think about really throughout your career in your life. Inevitably, you're going to have a number of experiences that you're not going to want to like. You're not going to like things that require you to work harder than you want to, things that infringe on activities that are much more fun and enjoyable. But you have to make sure that you do them, whether it be your schoolwork, in work itself. I can't tell you the number of times, it even happens today. There are many times on a weekend that I will go in on a Sunday to catch up and do work when I'd rather be home sleeping late, reading the Sunday paper, hanging out and watching the football game perhaps, but it has to get done. And one of the reasons that I have that ability to go and do that now is because of that paper route many years ago. Throughout your life, no matter how successful you become, whatever title you have, how much money you've ever made, you always going to have that need to sort of dig deep. When I went to Stonehill College is only 15 minutes away from where I grew up. Unfortunately, I didn't own a car and did not have the money to buy a car, nor did my parents. Thankfully, the Brockton Area Transit, the bus system, goes to Stonehill. Unfortunately, it doesn't go in a straight line. It doesn't go right down 138, 15-minute drive. It kind of weaves its way out of Stoughton, but I did it for 4 years and learned how to use time in that experience. Thankfully, one of the reasons I think I like to read and learn my love of reading were from those bus rides and having to use that time wisely. Again, as I mentioned, I didn't have a lot of money. Anything that I was making as a teller cleaning bank branches went towards paying the tuition. So any spending money I had during the week, I had to make sure I had it for bus fare. And of course, I needed it for lunch because I was a commuter. So I'd go on campus and I'd be there for the day. You know, when you're taking a bus ride that's more than 1 hour one way, you're not doing a lot of back and forth during the day. You're not doing any. You're getting up and you're going first thing in the morning and you're coming home at night. So I was there for lunch without a lot of money. And so learned to adapt my budgeting, and I would go to the vending machine and get a little package of cheese crackers, 6 of those. Cheese crackers, water from the bubbler, and occasionally a candy bar was my lunch. I look back on it today very, very fondly. At the time, I don't think of it as a particularly miserable existence at all. It was just something that you sort of did and you made yourself do because that's what it took to make it work. Now, I got to know a lot of residents at Stonehill very quickly because I wanted other places to go and I just didn't want to interact with a relatively small group of commuters. At times I'd be reminded of the fact that lunch could be a lot better than the stack of crackers and the water out of the bubbler because people go to the dining hall and they'd have a lot of food there. But again, you probably have a lot of those experiences yourself in some form or fashion, and those will only make you better. It'll allow you to be more resilient. It'll allow you to push through when things are tough. It'll allow you to be more patient, and again, having great faith that better things will come if you make those sacrifices today. You've probably heard the saying that money isn't everything. No, don't get me wrong. Money is certainly important, but it should never be your primary motivator. I see far too many new graduates, other people come into the bank in new positions, and what they're completely focused on is how much am I making today? How much am I going to make tomorrow? And how quickly can I make more money? And be concerned about how much they're making relative to other people in their department and in other parts of the company. That is not a way to be. And it will really limit your success. I've been very financially fortunate in my life, but I never did anything for the money. I didn't go into this career. I didn't aspire to be the president of the largest bank headquartered in Boston because it meant making a lot of money. In fact, as I said earlier, part of that dream was just completing an assignment. But even over time, the reason that I pursued banking was because I really loved it. And I loved the work that I was doing. It was interesting, it was challenging, I was passionate about it. And I really loved to go and do it. Anything you do in life, that's the key. It's got to really fit you. You've got to be passionate about it. You've got to really love it. You want to get up in the morning and go and do it. You're going to want to stay late. I see too many people around the company that are clock watchers. In certain parts of our company, don't get too near the elevator bank at 5 o'clock or you might get run over. Everyone's in a hurry to leave. And sometimes they don't come in until just before the workday starts. Now again, that's fine. People have family commitments, they have other things to do, and the official work hours are 8:30 to 5 at the bank. But if you want to be successful, you've got to go the extra mile, and you can't think about the money in doing it. And going that extra mile won't be a lot of effort if you do something that you love. That's the benefit that I've always had in this business by doing the many things that I've done in banking. I've always been really interested in doing it, wanted to do more, wanted to read outside of the office, wanted to stay late. Even today, I'm at my desk by 6 a.m. and I don't leave till at least 6 o'clock. Sometimes I'm out later at events. I don't tell you that because I'm trying to impress you with the number of hours I'm working. What I'm trying to impress you with is that the hours aren't important. You're going to want to put that kind of effort into it if it's something that you love. You know, I'll walk around the office sometimes of leaving for an event at 6 o'clock, maybe sometimes earlier, sometimes later, and I really take notice of those who are there working late. It really makes an impression on me because it reminds me of myself. I didn't stay there late because I was trying to impress anybody or hoping that someone would notice me there. It's because I really liked the work and I wanted to get it done and I wanted to do more of it. That kind of attitude will always serve you well. Because that senior person walking around the office, well, you know, they are going to notice you, and that's going to make an impression on them. To the degree that you're able to do more work, take on more projects, do more things, you will learn more, and you'll have more opportunities to do other things at your organization. You will advance quicker because your capacity to work is higher, you're much more knowledgeable, you're much more capable to do that particular work. But never do it for the money. If you start with the money in mind, it'll never be as great as you hoped it would be. One of the things that I've always thought about in doing anything is if you do good things will happen. If you work hard, good things will happen. If you're honest, good things will happen. If you help other people, good things will happen. Those are the things that you should be focused on in your career and in your life. And I guarantee you, if you do those things, those good things will happen. And however you define them. Some of them may be money. Some of them may be other things that are much more personal and important to you. I'm sure you know that your education is very important. You should get as much of it as you can. You should study hard. You should go to all your classes. You should try to progress to college, in addition to, of course, finishing high school. But your education just isn't your formal schooling. It's all of your combined experiences. And no amount of formal schooling will ever teach you some things that you really need to know. That's one of the things I really love about the Young Men's Success Series and what Percy has done with the program. It's why we at Eastern are such a believer in the program and want to be an advocate. Wanted to do this video to continue to share these stories with all of you, but also with others, other speakers to the program, others that might be thinking of being speakers, to encourage them to do the same. So much of what myself and other speakers and people who come to the program are trying to share are some of those things that you're not going to learn as part of your formal education. You're only going to learn as part of your experience. And even some of the things that I've shared and others have shared, they'll give you some pointers. Some of it'll stick, some of it you'll remember, a lot of it you won't. Some of it you will remember later when you personally go through it. And many of these things you learn on your own in different ways that are personal to you, so that years from now, you'll be doing the same thing I'm doing and sharing those stories, those successes, at times those failures and those setbacks with others so that they can also learn from your experience. I wish you the best of luck in your career and your life. The fact that you've made the commitment to participate in the Young Men's Success Series, that you took the time to watch this video says a lot about your willingness to learn and your own intention, your positive intentions for what you want to do with your life. And the last thing I'll share with you is this. Always have a positive outlook. Always have a sense of optimism about the future. Even if for some days you have no basis to have that positive outlook. A lot of studies have been done on the brain. There's a lot about the human brain that we don't know. You've probably heard some stories of people who have miraculously recovered from very serious diseases, usually fatal diseases, because of the power of the mind, their own positive outlook and positive thinking. I think there's a lot to that in anything of your life. If you have a positive outlook, if you have a sense of optimism and you put the effort behind it, you will accomplish things that you never thought you were able to accomplish because of that outlook. So again, thank you for listening and wish you the best.